Ted, both of you and I know a lot of successful guys that have maybe conquered life in business, maybe even in families, but they've always struggled to break through with their health and fitness. Why do you think the traditional fitness approach doesn't work for a busy professional?
Yeah, great question. And when you say traditional approach, are you talking about like diets, like following keto diets, or what do you mean specifically, just so I can rip it apart in the right way?
Yeah, I think, the myths and lies that we believe out there, the things that your approach tries to debunk.
Okay, right. So what most people do is they find themselves like the type of guy I work with, and you work with a similar demographic, right? So you find yourself maybe in your late 30s, early 40s, maybe even 50s, and you're at the pinnacle of your career. You're making more money than you ever have. But at the same time, you've realized all the work that you've done and the time that you spent with your family, because most of the people that I've worked with, they have families. And then they look in the mirror and feel like, man, this should be the best time of my life. I'm more wise. I'm more financially successful, but I feel like a shell of my former self. And as we get older, we kind of face we all have to figure out how to deal with getting older, right? It's why the midlife crisis happens. And so when people find themselves there, they're like, okay, well, like, what are people doing? So they might try a diet like keto or paleo or, carnivore, more extreme, right? Or they might try to do the workouts that they used to do in their 20s, and it ends up not working. You'll end up losing weight on keto, provided there's a calorie deficit there. But the issue is the type of people I go work with, they like going to 5-star resorts where food is part of the experience. Are you really going to go to Positano and not eat pasta or pizza? That's not the reality for most people. And I think they don't get like, hey, if you can't do this for the rest of your life, you shouldn't even be messing around with it, right? Meaning, I have something I call the 10-year test. I ask people, if you don't see yourself doing this for at least 10 years, it's not the right approach for you. Because what I'm doing, I'm not 10% lean at the moment, but I can see my abs. I stay within 10 to 15% body fat. I eat what I want, and I could see myself doing this for the rest of my life, not just 10 years or even 20 years, the rest of my life. Same thing with my training. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That is another case, right? I'm not sure how many decades I'll be able to keep that up. But as far as the type of training I do, when in the gym and cardio, I can keep that up for the rest of my life. And people don't ask themselves that question. They just get into this point where they're desperate to make change and they go for the shortcut, and it ends up maybe working for a short term. And then they end up in that cycle where, oh, it didn't work. I got too busy, man. I went on vacation. Oh, stress. Things got busy with the kids and at work. And so that's why that doesn't work.
I used to buy into this belief, and it was something that a mentor used to preach years ago. And he is a very well-known figure in the fitness space and also the business building community. And he would say, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And what he's trying to kind of speak to there is the discipline. If you can build it in one area of your life, example, fitness, it's going to spill over into business. And the opposite would be, right? If you can succeed in building a company, KPIs, discipline, resiliency, mindset, like the things that would make somebody financially successful are oftentimes a lot of the same characteristics that make somebody successful in the fitness space. I think when somebody finds fitness early in their life, it works. They can take what they've learned through changing their body, through the mindset, the grit, the setting the long-term goals, delayed gratification, and it does translate. And I've seen a lot of people that came up in the fitness space with me have gone on to become incredibly successful fitness people or business people. For some reason, I haven't seen it work the opposite. People will dedicate their 20s and 30s to building financial success, but then they have a hard time translating it over into fitness. I'm curious your thoughts around that, and why do you think it works in one way maybe, but not in the other way?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can't speak from personal experience because, I've built my business probably like you have around keeping myself healthy, because I know if I'm uh, not able to get an erection to have sex with my wife or girlfriend, it doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank. Or if I hate what I see in the mirror, doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank. I'll be able to afford a therapist, I guess, right? Or if I get a heart attack, it doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank. Of course, again, get the best cardiovascular surgeon in the world to help you out. But what I think, based on, again, this might just my experience, here's what I've seen: guys get addicted to work, and I think this is such a funny thing because we'll look at people probably like how we look at people who are in great shape, and you probably know people who are in great shape and look amazing, but their relationships are a mess, and maybe financially they're a mess. I was like that in my 20s, and the guys that I see, it's kind of like that, where they're making money. We look up to people in our society who are making a lot of money, and we should. They're successful and, playing the economic game. We all need to be good at the economic game, or there's severe consequences to not being good at that: bankruptcy and struggling to pay your bills, etc. But they get addicted to it and they can't break themselves away, right? And also, like in society, we kind of worship money a little bit too much. And then you realize, like, dude, you can't hire someone to work out for you. You can't hire someone to eat the right amount of calories, or to say no to the second bottle of wine, or whatever it is. Like, this is something that you have to do. And despite, someone's financial success, it's like you still have to earn this. And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what other people think about your financial success. You have to earn this. And there's something that's more fundamental and primal even about being in shape, especially over 40. 20-year-old guys in shape, it's cool. It's great. Talk to me in 20 years, though, because it's a different game, especially if you have kids, especially if you're running a business. It gets more complicated. But that's what I would say. I see a lot of guys who are kind of addicted to the hustle, just grind, and they've done very well. And I think there's one other thing I will say here, Frank, and I don't think people say it enough. There is an opportunity cost to fitness, at least time-wise, right? It means you do have to schedule workouts and show up and stop whatever you're doing. I remember I had one client. He was running a business, really great guy. So I'm not saying anything bad about him. It's just an observation of a habit. Instead of doing a workout, he got a call from someone to meet up and discuss a potential business venture together. And he skipped his workout for it because it was way more fun to work on that than it was to go to the gym. So people, you really have to get hooked on the gym, and it takes a while for that to happen. And a lot of guys, they can't get themselves to the point where, like, okay, well, I got myself into shape, I'm never getting out of shape again. So it was a long answer, but I've thought about that a lot, and that's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think a problem is, the fitness industry, since the 80s, 90s has always been marketed as these quick fixes, fancy potions and pills and short-term solutions and 30-day transformations. And, there's that trending Netflix documentary now, The Biggest Loser, so it's had a bad representation where there's going to be this short-term approach. And a guy that builds wealth knows that it takes years to become financially successful. It takes years to build a skill set. It's no different, but for some reason there's a disconnect, and there's oftentimes even a disconnect from understanding that it's data driven. I mean, getting in shape is physics, physiology, biology, and mathematics. I mean, some core concepts there, right? It's like you need to have energy expenditure tracked, so you got to take in less than you output, and you got to progressively overload to build strength over time. And there's some other variables in there, but like guys will have their KPIs dialed in. They'll know ROI expense reports. They'll know exactly what's going into the business, what's coming out of it. They'll know exactly what payroll is at. But when it comes to their fitness, it's like they kind of play it by ear. Why do you think this myth is so prevalent in guys and so many that are data driven in other areas of their life struggle to get the concept of the data driven success of fitness?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head. I've never heard it put like that, the way you said it, but right, it's decades and decades and decades of the quick fixes being marketed, and then if you look at, and social media has amplified that. And I think guys, like, I don't know how you feel about this, Frank, but man, I kind of struggle because I know how to go viral. That's not hard. And the more extreme things that I say, the more polarizing things that I say, but that's not the goal. And of course, I have like conscience and ethics and morals.
Well, dude, I'll tell you, man, that was a thing that I know prevented me from becoming massively successful in fitness, because I couldn't do it. I had 15 years of background and experience in my own life and working in physical gyms before I got into the internet marketing space. And I got into online marketing and coaching around this age where long sales letters were a big thing. You can make bold claims, lose 80 pounds in a weekend if you drink lemon juice. I had friends that were 8, 9, 10-figure entrepreneurs in that space. Nobody made $1 billion, but I had some guys that sold some companies, some friends for 9 figures plus. But a part of me couldn't do it. And I knew at the time that I was taking money out of my own pocket, but I couldn't mislead somebody. I just couldn't do it. I had that same conscious that you spoke to. Is like I wanted to provide the real value with what actually is going to help, and that message isn't sexy.
Yeah, and Frank, there's a way to do it now where we just hired a company, for example, to help us on Instagram, and there's ways of hooking people's attention without doing those claims, but you got to do it in different ways. And yeah, but going back to also, I think there's another answer. Why aren't these guys more data driven? It's not talked about. I think guys like Peter Attia are talking about getting things done. His book, Outlive. Most of my best clients, they've read that book. They just don't want to pay $150,000 for a year to work with Peter. Or yeah, and he's a bit over the top. So what I do is I try to teach people, listen, health. Also, there's a bit of I would say this before I go on here, is there's a bit of a misconception. There's a lot of guys. I remember, I'm harder on people now, but I remember being on a call with this guy. He's borderline morbidly obese. He's got high blood pressure. He's like, yeah, but I'm pretty healthy. I'm like, the fuck, dude? Like, how are you so out of touch? How are you so out of touch? And I think part of it is he's probably looking around at other Americans and thinking, well, I'm not as big as that dude. And look at all. In fact, I had one of my clients, Chad. He's totally crushed it in the program, but we met up in person, and he was saying, he's like, I've never been the fat guy at at a gather, any type of gathering before. And again, I wouldn't call him that, but he's got weight to lose for sure. So his meaning, he's typically one of the smaller guys that he's hanging out with, right? And so that's part of it. And so if you're listening right now, what I would tell you is the great thing about health and fitness, especially these days, is we have metrics that we've never had the ability to compile metrics before and get our KPIs for our health. For example, you can get a DEXA scan. You can now know how much muscle you have. You can now know what your body fat percentage is. And with the DEXA scan in particular, you can get your visceral fat, which, if we're talking about avoiding the health issues that so many guys over 40 go on to develop, it's coming. A lot of it comes from that. You don't want low T? Well, guess what? It ain't the freaking microplastics or endocrine disruptors that are the number one thing causing low T. It's your big gut. It's your big gut. And testosterone gets converted into estrogen in fat cells via the aromatase enzyme. I mean, it's super simple. So if you've got a belly and you didn't have one before, especially now, there's some people who maybe struggle with their weight for their whole life. I really do think that's a separate case, although the same things that you said, calorie deficits and progressive overload, that's what you have to apply. But if you were in shape before and you've progressively gotten out of shape, you've gotten a bigger belly over time, like, you're headed towards a really bad place. So get your metrics. I've worked with guys who haven't been to the doctor in years, and these guys are making $1 million a year. And it's like, what's going on? Like, find a doctor you trust, but get your blood work done, get a DEXA scan, get your VO2 max, get your colonoscopy, get a calcium score. You need to be on top of this. And the other thing is, doctors, look, no hate against them, but they've got their hands full because most people are dropping dead because of all these other issues because their health is so bad. So they don't have time to coach you through how to do all this stuff or what you should do. They're not going to push you to get more advanced blood testing, right? You've got to kind of take responsibility for yourself here. And it's tough, but there's so much information out there now that you can, there's no excuse for it. You just have to find the right person that you relate to, listen to them, follow what they say. And again, it really starts with getting like a snapshot of where you are. And I've seen clients, just one more thing here, and I'll turn it over to you, but I've seen clients who came in with the story, no, I'm pretty good. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, guess what? Your hemoglobin A1C is 5.9. You're pre-diabetic. That's not pretty good, right? How do you how does it sound to get your toe amputated if you keep going this way and get into full-blown diabetes or maybe have a heart attack? How does that sound? Because you may not have diabetes yet, but you're on the way there. So I've seen guys do 180 from, I'm in pretty good shape, to like, oh my God, I got to get my shit together.
Yeah, one of the things you said there that maybe we can help guys kind of weed through, if they're looking to, drop the 20 pounds or get these, metrics and get in a plan, is there's an overabundance of information. And it's both good and bad, right? We live in the information age, but people almost get paralysis by analysis, right? They're trying to weed through so much. You mentioned, Peter Attia, but then, you listen to somebody else and he's got, just as much credentials. He's got the MD behind his name and he's saying things that completely contradict what Peter said. So how can a guy that is, looking to make these changes filter through this overabundance of information? Because like you said, you know what to say. You got a fancy microphone and, you speak with confidence. Anybody can go online and market themselves as a quote unquote expert or professional. So how can a guy know if he's listening to the right person? And how can he filter out to make sure he's getting the right information and paying attention to the core, let's call them the KPIs? Like, what are the key things that he should be focusing on?
It's such a great question, Frank, but the answer is you can't know. You can't know. It's just, I have the background to like, and you do too, right? We've done some of the same courses, hung out with Tom Purvis and some other guys who are top guys in the industry. So I can hear something, and if I don't know whether it's BS or not, I know where I can go to figure it out super fast. And I have a podcast, and I've interviewed hundreds of people on it, including yourself. I know I can like tap into my network and ask someone and get a solid answer. I read a lot of research these days, but I wasn't trained in reading research. So there's guys who do it way better than me. I know who to go to. But if you're trying to figure this out on your own, you're not going to. You're because I had a guy the other day. He's like, "Oh, well, I'm not that impressed with your marketing." I'm like, "I've been doing this for 25 years before there was even online marketing." Right. Because I don't have like, and we're actually working on marketing, but it was just funny what he said, because we're expensive, right? We work with entrepreneurs and executives. We're not a cheap program, and we don't advertise as such. But I thought it was kind of funny. He's like, I'm like, cool. Hire that guy with the hire V-Shred, because that guy has insanely good marketing. He spends yeah, but you're gonna get a terrible program, right? Like because it's mass market, just like but go for it. Anyway, and it's cheap. But here's how I would say though. Listen, first of all, make sure who you're learning from has some client testimonials. For me, I interview my clients because I don't want you to just see their before and after photos, but I want you to hear about their experience. The other thing I would say is the dirty secret in the body transformation business, and this was true of my business as well when I first started it. You can get a 12 or 16 week transformation and someone slides back, right? We have people who keep it for years. It took me a long time to figure out how to do that, and it's more mindset related than it is mindset and lifestyle related than it has to do with like they understand the mechanics and have tracked their calories and workouts, etc. It's like, yeah, it's a different skill set, and you have to dig a bit deeper for those people who need to do that type of work. Some, like I worked with one guy, he just crushed it. Worked with me for a year. He's walking around just Trevor. He's one of my best transformations. He goes on vacation, still drinks alcohol, doesn't eat a perfect diet. He likes to eat sandwiches, and he's leaner than I am all the time, because we help figure out something that would work for him. Between the exercise, I showed him the way we approach getting into a calorie deficit, and also balancing out meals on vacation and things. But anyway, that's what I would say. Look for people who work with people instead of influencers who are just kind of looking to go viral and probably don't have any or maybe very few people that they work with. They're plugging products, which there's nothing wrong with plugging products, but if you want to listen to them because you want to change, coaching is how you learn that.
I think video testimonials trump pictures, right? Because like you said, you can do a 12-week transformation and get some befores and afters, and people can look incredible. You can manipulate lighting, Photoshop, but like through a video transformation, I think you will be able to hear that mindset shift, that identity. And that's where I want to kind of zero in here a little bit, because you said something I think really probably answered the first question, right? Why does the guy struggle, despite being successful in business? Like, if he didn't come from money and build wealth, he had to go through an identity transformation to create success in his career. I know when I left the corporate world and stepped into entrepreneurship, there was an identity transformation. Like, I needed to embrace this new role as an identity. Well, I embraced the role of a bodybuilder in my early 20s, and it stuck with me. So there was always this shift. And that's a lot of what we talk about in the addiction community. Is true freedom is not found in quitting or abstaining. It's through this transformation, identity transformation. I think that's the same thing that you're speaking to there. You use mindset and lifestyle language. there's tons of great resources out there. We'll direct people to your content, the tactics, right? The macros, the workouts, all that stuff. Maybe we'll circle back and speak to that. But I think specifically now, let's talk about that mindset and lifestyle shift that a person needs to go through. Like, in your language or your best summary here, like, what sits at the core of that mindset shift that somebody has to experience and walk through?
Yeah, for sure. And I typically use, you're right to point out, I typically use terms like lifestyle and mindset because they're more popular. Again, marketing, right? Because identity transformation, although that is where it's at, it's just like, oh, what do you mean by that? But mindset, oh yeah, mindset. Nobody can kind of define mindset, but anyway, yeah. And to your point, it's like, you don't want to be the guy who asks, how do I lose 30 pounds or how do I get to 15% body fat? You ask, who do I need to become to lose those 30 pounds and keep it off, or to get to that 15% body fat and stay that way? Who do I need to become? Because there's a lot of beliefs. A lot of my clients, I had one client, John, great guy, runs a business. When he first started working with me, I was like, yeah, our first goal should be to get you, he was like 190. I forget how tall he is. But 190 gets you down to 170. And then let's get you below that. And he told me later, he's like, oh, when you said that, I thought you were full of shit. He didn't believe it. A lot of people don't believe because of, going back to what you said about the quick fixes. They've tried it before, it didn't work. And, oh, is your metabolism broken? Let's do a metabolic reset. And, oh, it's the low T, that's why you can't lose fat. Like, they believe this stuff and it's installed in their mind as a belief that influences their behavior. It causes them to give up. It causes them maybe not to really go for it because it's probably not going to work anyway. Might as well not join a coaching program. It's probably not going to work anyway, right? They think that there's something wrong with their body. There's nothing wrong with your body. And by the way, I should say I've been through that myself. I got fat in my mid-30s, and I thought I was doing everything right, Frank. I came from more of the low carb. I didn't come from like the bodybuilding world where maybe it's more focused on like you got to get the calories and all that in. I was just like eating clean food, doing paleo style diets and low carb. And I got fat and I was like, you know what? I'm doing everything right. And I'm doing these short, intense workouts. Man, I'm crushing it in my workouts, which the real reason why they were so hard is because they were 20 minutes long and not a lot of rest. And I was fucking out of shape. I was fat and out of shape. That's why the workout's hard, not because I'm burning so much energy or pushing myself, right? I think guys don't realize that having having a lot of visceral fat puts more demand on your system, especially if you got a little bit of sleep apnea going on or something. So you have to overcome some of those beliefs, and it takes a long time. It's very hard to do it on your own. Another thing is that so it starts with there. You don't need to believe in progressive overload for it to work, or calorie deficit for it to work, but you need to believe it enough to give it a try, an earnest try, and then let the results prove it to you, right? That's how I started believing in calories, because before I didn't believe it was important. I was like, insulin controls everything, bro. Like one of those guys. Freaking hate those guys now. Want to strangle them, because it's like, just reminds me of how cocky I was when I was saying the same nonsense, and it's not true. Anyway, so after you overcome that enough to really give some solid science-backed approaches a try, then it becomes sticking with it. This is the tricky part. Sticking with it through the ups and downs. I have a lot of clients who, I don't have time to do an hour workout, so I just didn't go today. It's like, man, go in there, do one set of each exercise and get out in 30 minutes. You do not say no because you don't have the time, right? And putting it in your schedule, because I think another thing that people don't realize is a lot of people battle habits. So you have a habit of skipping workouts. It's a program in your brain. And you're going to get to the point where the stress comes up in business or family, whatever it is, and it's going to say, oh, you don't have time for this workout, skip it. If that happens once, okay. But if that starts to become a pattern, which it already is a pattern, you just get sucked right back into it.
Especially if skipping it leads to a positive outcome, right? Like you do close a deal or something happens, great. Then you've reinforced it from a behavioral perspective. Oh, I skipped a workout, but something great happened. So skipping workouts actually is a good thing because look at, I closed that deal. So it's understanding, the reward mechanism that's driven there. And I think, that's the importance of scheduling it, making it the non-negotiable. And for a lot of business guys, is like, just make it the first thing of your day. Like then it's out of the way.
What you said just now, Frank, people need to pay attention to that because that becomes like, it's so insightful what you just said. It's so insightful. Obviously, you know it because you wouldn't have said it, but pay attention to what Frank just said there. And if that resonates with you at all, yeah, you're sabotaging yourself. It's okay. But, and just to follow up on your point, there's no immediate, like if I skip a workout today, it doesn't matter. If I skip my workouts for a year, now we're talking. So there's much more immediate gratification if you go close a deal, or even just go do something fun. Go watch a movie, hang out with your kid, whatever it is. Where the workout, it will give you some immediate gratification because you'll feel better after it, right? Chemicals get flowing, but man, it gets even trickier with diet because you literally get no noticeable benefit from eating one good meal, right?
Yeah. We could use that positive reinforcement, anchor it the other way around, right? Like give yourself the thing you want after the workout, however you can kind of reward it. I mean, that's classic behavioral kind of training. And it's what you do with a dog when you tell them to sit, you give them a treat, like you reinforce that. So that's obviously a lot of what, not a lot of what we do, but it's an element of addiction transformation, I say, which is our world. Mindset, lifestyle, hierarchy of importance. I think a lot of guys miss these up as well. You said it. They go 90 miles an hour in the gym, and then they forget about the other variables. And I think the gym is a smaller component than what people truly believe. And it's actually, especially for the guy that's over 40, it's the nutrition, the recovery aspects, sleep, the things that are happening. Because in 24 hours, if you're training for 30 minutes to an hour, it's such a small variable. But guys will hit the gas pedal and then they'll not pay attention to any of the other variables that are really driving change. How would you rank the hierarchy of importance for the things that are actually going to drive this transformational change?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, ultimately, based on the best evidence, right? Exercise is king for that, right? If you eat the perfect diet and you never exercise, you're going to be screwed. But to your point, if a guy's already got a bit of a habit, well, let's just say this. If you're listening right now and you're not exercising, like get exercising. It's the number one thing. But if you're already, let's say like your example, you're already going into the gym, you're pushing yourself, the transformation is going to come when you see something very different in the mirror. So many guys I talk to, they don't like, they're in their 40s and 50s. They don't like what they see in the mirror. They avoid taking photos. They don't like taking their shirt off at the beach or right. And if you're in a situation where you're pushing yourself in the gym and you're kind of like, yeah, well, I'm strong, but you're not happy with the way you look, it's going to come from nutrition in particular and the things that support it. because we know like you can sleep 5 hours a night and you can still lose fat if you're in a calorie deficit. I did that in Bangkok in 2019, where I was taking calls in the morning. The time was just crazy, right? But I was also, it was such an amazing time in my life. I did not mind the sleep loss, and I didn't feel that it was that stressful. But if you're in a situation and you are losing sleep and stressed out, you're probably going to find that number one, stress is the trigger that causes you to overeat or drink, or and I should say, poor sleep amplifies the stress, meaning you're more susceptible to it. And we also know, even if you don't feel particularly stressed, we know that sleep deprivation lowers testosterone. It causes people, it affects the brain's reward center. So they all of a sudden they're, it's like, hungry for some, chocolate covered popcorn or whatever it is, or hamburger or whatever it is, instead of like, oh, I just need a meal, give me some chicken breast or steak and a potato, etc. So those other things, it's really the 23 hours outside the gym that's going to make a lot more of a difference. Another reason to that too, I think guys overestimate how many calories you're burning in a workout. They think, oh, I must have been burnt like 800 calories that hardcore workout. But if you're not doing hours of endurance exercise, those are the guys burning maybe 1,000 calories in a workout, and it takes hours to do that. So you're burning maybe 300-400, maybe 500, depending on how many sets you're doing, how long you're spending, in between sets, and how long your sets are. Lifting weights doesn't burn that many calories.
Yeah. Do you even think that's a number that should be cared about or pay attention? I can tell you, I've never once looked at how many calories have burned in a workout, because I don't think it's relevant at all.
No, you shouldn't be looking at that. The companies just tell you that because it's like because our world is driven on, for better or worse, it's driven by what people want, right?
Well, that's short-term gratification. That's like, oh, I just worked out. I burned, you can look at an Apple Watch, which is probably inaccurate to begin with. Or if you held on to the cardio machine while you're doing it, that's going to be incredibly inaccurate. So they're overestimating that number and then underestimating what they're eating, because they're not weighing their food. They're not measuring it. And, they've overshot their caloric intake by 1,000 because the peanut butter said a tablespoon and you took a heaping, giant scoop 3 times. Which can shoot it up. I mean, people have no idea how much calories are in like just one scoop of peanut butter. So once again, paying attention to the wrong numbers, the wrong metrics.
Yeah, and to your point there, most people follow like the quality narrative about nutrition. And this is so tricky. People always want a simple, easy to understand way of a model to follow for nutrition, but nutrition is complicated. If one person has sugar, that could mean it's pouring gasoline on the fire of their diabetes diagnosis. If I have sugar, that's what I call performance enhancing meal before I go train, because I have no issues with blood sugar. I'm lean anyway. So people tell them, I remember I was talking to this overweight guy, and he was telling me, no, but listen to, I mean, he's not overweight, he's obese. And he's like, no, but I have this green juice and I eat the acai. And I'm like, yeah, your green juice has 300 calories in it. Your acai bowl is 500 calories. And there you go. There's 800 calories. And you're probably still hungry after that. So you eat more healthy things and put on some granola and some coconut, right? And then, as you said, like the sad thing, weigh out a tablespoon of peanut butter and, count the calories in that. And so people avoid the calorie conversation. The low carb community, which I used to be a part of for 10 years, they just totally say it's not even a thing. But the best, if you're listening to this right now, do a challenge. Get MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or whatever you want. We use MyFitnessPal in my coaching business, but track your calories for a week. It'll change your life. And you'll learn more about nutrition from doing that than literally any diet book on the market.
Yeah, it'll shock most people through a lot of different things. Probably one would be the inconsistency. One day they're at 4,000, the next day at 2,200, the next day at 3,600, then they're at 2,800. Like, so I think there's got to be this level of consistency. Consistency is a driver of most things in success, but also it's going to shock you is how much you are actually over consuming. I think I heard it was the average calories for in America right now is like 3,800 a day or something. Like it is huge. Like that's what I eat right now, trying to grow at a 6'3", 240-pound man. I'm consuming 3,900 calories. That is my number. And I'm gaining 1.5 pounds per week on that. And I'm a large human being that's been training for 20 plus years of his life. And that's the average for somebody that is like 5'8" and should be 160. So yeah, we're massively overeating. No, I was just going to ask. I'm curious, just maybe some of your story that's led you to maybe the beliefs that you have today, and even how you ended up specifically working with the professional men that you do, because you've talked a lot about very dogmatic in the past. You're part of these cultures, but at the same time, I know you're incredibly educated. And we talked beforehand about some of the people that you've trained under and worked with. So, what's been this journey, Ted, that's kind of led you to where you currently sit today?
Yeah, and a lot of people know me or initially, right? Like people know me because I trained Robert Downey Jr. getting ready for his first Iron Man movie. I worked with Ricky Martin for the better part of a year. I also worked with Richard Branson, only trained him one time. But I worked with his wife, Joan, for a while because the Pilates girls in Miami Beach were just messing her knees up, right? Like, oh, Pilates, right? Tom Purvis is always good to, Pilates is a brand name. It's not a serious sequence. That what matters is a sequence of exercises and joints and muscles that are getting worked. And anyway, so, but the way I got into health and fitness was I was studying neuroscience in college, and family tragedy happened. My brother got kidnapped and murdered. Long story. Don't know if it's particularly relevant, but I ended up finding, after doing a few odd jobs, I found myself in health and fitness because it helped me build myself back up. I had always kind of worked out, and I was in martial arts, lifted weights, but I was really kind of half that and then half like smoking weed and skateboarding. Right. So that was like, I was a party guy, but I did lift weights, and I was reasonably in shape for the other things I was up to. And anyway, so I got back into it after my brother was killed, and it helped me build my body back, which I think, even if you haven't been through something that extreme, if you want to build your body back, if you're in a bad place or midlife crisis or whatever, it's the easiest ROI, or the biggest, I shouldn't say the easiest, but the biggest ROI, right? And, or if you've been through something like I have, bad divorce or whatever it is, you can build yourself back from that. And I got I became a true believer in the power of health and fitness to help turn around someone's life and get them back on track. And then I got my first job working as a personal trainer in Miami Beach, except they weren't even, personal training certifications. I think a lot of people don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's different now, but it was like a weekend certification. It was like $500 or $700 or whatever. I was doing this shitty job. I was getting paid decently, but it was just like I was working in these receiverships and bankruptcies, and helping run these buildings while these court battles were going on. And then I quit, got my personal trainer certification, started working in the Eden Rock Resort and Spa in 1999. Which is how I met all the celebrity clientele and all the local celebrities who introduced me to all the, in people there in Miami Beach. And that's just kind of who I started working with. entrepreneurs and executives and attorneys and doctors. That's who went to that gym. And I really enjoyed working with those people. I worked with some professional athletes, but I quickly realized like it's a whole different skill set to work with those guys. And I didn't really like doing it that much. Because, I had that party guy vibe still. So I like going out. I like traveling. I like going out to dinner. I don't drink much anymore, but I do enjoy a couple of drinks. I enjoy food. I enjoy trying new restaurants. So I came up with a plan, a program, a system, really, a framework to help enjoy life and still be lean. Because I don't have any restrictions to my diet. I go out. I still drink alcohol, although not a lot. I still have things that people say you can't have and be lean. And that's what I teach my clients, because that's what they want. They don't want to, maybe some of them, like I mentioned my client Trevor, he's probably 10-ish% body fat, like legit 10, uh and because some guys are saying, oh, I'm like 12% body fat. I'm like, you have no veins on your arms, man. You are like 17 or 18. You're nowhere near. Anyway, so yeah, most of my clients, they want to learn how to enjoy their life. They want to share a piece of cake with their daughter on her 11th birthday or whatever. So that's what I help them do.
Yeah, I think that body fat is another number that is just grossly misunderstood and misrepresented. It's like, no, you're like, I love what you said there, man, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit about the personal struggle that you went through. A lot of our audience is going to be guys that are maybe struggling, not specifically with a death in the family, but maybe that mental health identity kind of crisis, right? Whether they're struggling with addiction or breaking through in a marriage. And, it's what you said is like, it's got the highest ROI to kind of help you change how you see yourself. And that's why it's become a foundational principle in our recovery programs. Is I say all the time, it's very hard to see yourself as the same person if you're walking around in a new body. And if we're talking about lifestyle and mindset transformation, or what I would say is identity transformation, well, we're going to become a different person. Like it's going to be packaged in new wrapping, and it starts with the physical. And sometimes mindset works take months to feel. Deep emotional work can take months, weeks to really experience. Follow a training plan, dial in your nutrition, optimize your sleep. Within weeks, 2 weeks, you're going to feel something different. The minute you put that belt on and it goes to another loop, it's like that positive feedback. Oh, this is working. The minute you put a shirt on that didn't fit and now it's fitting a little bit tighter around the chest and arms, okay, it's working. Positive reinforcement will, help shape positive behavioral change. So I love that you said that. It was obviously a big part of what led you to getting into the work. And it's been a 2-decade plus career with a lot of success and some really cool experiences packaged with that. I love to maybe wrap things up here, just maybe with the longevity kind of biohacking conversation. Obviously you're working with guys that are 40, 50, have worked hard, built an incredible life. And it's not just about aesthetics for them right now. It's also about extending life so they can enjoy the fruits of their labor for as long as possible. We talked about some of the key metrics, hormone optimization, some of the other drivers for physical change. What are some of the variables that guys should be looking at manipulating, or what are some of the key metrics in terms of this longevity conversation? How are you integrating maybe some of the new biohacking concepts into the things that you do with your clients?
Yeah, sure. That's a great one. And really, it starts with the foundation. I don't think anybody should be messing around with anything. And like, don't do a GLP-1 agonist. Don't take TRT. Learn how to train properly. Learn how to get into a calorie deficit. Get rid of your belly. Get your blood work along the way, because that can tell you a lot. Get your VO2 max. That's probably, besides leg strength, that's the number that you want to pay attention to. We're still working out, is it causative? Is it correlative? But we'll figure that out eventually. But for right now, like, get your VO2 max. One thing that's different about VO2 max than muscle mass and fat mass, you can lose fat at any age. It gets harder as you get older. Like, I wouldn't put a 70 or 80-year-old guy, unless he was in really good health, on a strict diet to lose fat quickly, which is what we do in my program. We get about 10 pounds down in the first month, right? And but you can still do it. You can still build muscle at any age as well. Maybe if we're talking about peaking, if you're already maxed out your genetics, will you keep growing as you hit your 70s or 80s? Probably not, right? But for most people, we're not there. We're not you, Frank, right? But with VO2 max, even if you're top tier endurance athlete, it comes down over time, even if you don't change anything with your training. So it's something that it's like something you want to invest in. And I love using that language because so many people are investing for retirement. It's like, yeah, but what do you want to do with that money? Because it's just going to sit there if you're not in shape enough to do much. I remember being in Arizona, and I did one of the plane tours through the Grand Canyon. Incredible experience. And I remember I was with this older couple who were retired 100% for sure. And the guy was struggling to walk up the steps because it's not like a commercial aircraft. It's a smaller airplane. The steps much steeper, and he needed help to get up there. Right. I've seen people slip and fall on the streets of Lisbon, Portugal, because they're traveling the world after they're retired and it took a really bad fall. And Lisbon, I lived there for a year. It's no joke. Those tiles, you need to be fast on your feet, which Portuguese people are. You'll see quite a bit of older Portuguese people still walking around up and down the hills of Lisbon, but they don't weigh 250 pounds at 5'9" or whatever it is, right? So get that handled first. Then after that, we don't really know, Frank, right? Like, the peptides are really popular, and I don't mean like GLP-1 agonists, but the BCP 157 and all that stuff. There's not a lot of research on it. Could turn out to be amazing, could not. You know, I don't really mess around with too many of the other things like I know that, for example, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, that's something that's very promising, but you need a chamber to do it. So either you got to be wealthy or live in a place where you have access to it and don't mind forking over the money to do it 1-2 times a week, or right. So yeah, man, as far as like longevity, I'll tell you one thing I did do is I got stem cell injections in my joints. And that was game changing. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is like, do what you need to do to deal with joint pain, because joint pain is going to be the limiting factor. The key to longevity, here it is in a nutshell: be in badass shape for as long as possible. Be in badass shape for as long as possible.
Absolutely. As strong as you can possibly be, body fat in a moderately healthy phase. It's not shredded. Like, shredded's not going to like extend your life. It's going to be in that healthy range for men. Maybe 11, 12 to 15, 16% is going to kind of be optimal. But focus on strength training. I think the core principles, regular movement, active, don't sit all day long. And I'm sure you would agree there as well. I think what you put into your mind and your relationships and the conversations and the things that you do that drive passion and joy in your life are going to be a driver that not enough people, I think, talk about. Yeah, it's great having tens of millions of dollars in the bank, but like, if you don't have anything that lights you up inside and you're not connected to people relationship wise, it's you're missing a piece, I think, in my opinion. So yeah, I agree with all of that. But yeah, be strong, have a healthy dose of muscle mass, not jacked either. Like I don't say I'm doing things that are, I try to weigh them, I try to have a balance as much as I possibly can, because I know some of the things I've done in the past probably took some years off, and it's just a sacrifice that I paid, but I don't have any regrets about any of that. So, no, I agree with all that, Ted.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't really talk, like, I'm not at the Brian Johnson cutting edge of things, right? And I don't think anyone else really, very few people are. It's really about what we just said, with just try to be as fit as possible, strong and cardiovascularly fit too, and lean. And then, man, get your checkups. I had a colonoscopy done when I was 41, and I had a precancerous polyp removed from my colon. And you wouldn't say, "Oh man, that guy's bad." She would be. I was quite lean, man. I was Thailand training Thai boxing, 90 minutes a few times a week, lifting weights a few times a week. I did not look unfit, but some of these things, a lot of it is genetic, that you need to be on top of. Other side of that, I had a CT angiogram, which is when they inject you with contrast and take a picture of what's going on to see the amount of plaque you have, not just your calcium score, which is the hard plaque, but the soft plaque too. And I don't have any, right? But I did some things where I thought I was gonna have a bit of a problem. Like, these got some buildup. And then I have clients who are younger and didn't do all the crazy, like I did. I shared my party lifestyle. I did a bunch of things. I was low carb for 10 years. I'm sure my cholesterol levels were, when I did have them tested, they were not exorbitantly like crazy high, but they were high, and I'm sure they had been that way for years. But I didn't have any problem with it. But since I had my dad had colon cancer, so being on top of those tests to make sure you don't die from something preventable. And then what you said, the other side of health, right? The social side. If you're religious, right? If you're, make sure that you're filling that part of you're filling that cup in your life, socially filling that cup in your life. Because if you're using health and fitness like I did to run away from a life that you don't really like, it's healthier than doing drugs or the porn, right? But it's still not healthy, right? The way you man up is to deal with the things that you need to deal with in your life and to work on all those parts.
I've definitely fallen into that trap and have known a lot of people there as well. The bodybuilding community is filled with people that are running for. It's become memes, right? How do you hide your emotions? We hide them in our muscles. It's whatever.
I've
But
not seen that one, but I like it.
Or what do we do with our emotions? We hide them in our muscles, and it's like a dark, garage gym when the guy's got a sweatshirt on, I can't even see his face, and he's squatting at 3 a.m. in the morning. Which I've been there. Some people have, but Ted, I really enjoyed this, man. Tell the guys where they can connect with you online, socially. Obviously, we'll link your podcast down there below, and how to maybe find more out about your coaching if they're fit and kind of fall into the category of who we described here today.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Frank. So yeah, if you want to find out more, go to legendarylifepodcast.com/free. You can watch my masterclass there. That'll give you, if this kind of piqued your curiosity, you can see how I break down the framework of what I actually do with clients, and you can make a decision from there. It's also just some good information, even if you're not interested in working together, that's cool too. But if you're in my demographic and you're looking to make change and you haven't been able to do it on your own, that's the place to start.
Yeah, guys, legendarylifepodcast.com/free. We'll have it linked down there in the show notes, in the description if you're watching us here on YouTube. Ted, we like to end every conversation here with the same and final question. So this is episode 303. It's been a little over 6 years of running the show here, so this question's been asked a lot. Title of our show, though, is obviously called The Superhuman Life. This has been a journey of curiosity and discovery for me and trying to define what that means in my own life. But I love to always get the guest takes. So as we wrap up today's conversation, Ted, how would you define living a superhuman life?
If you want to be, feel, and perform superhuman, you have to realize that first, you're only human. Figure out what those limitations are, work on them. Rest when you need to rest. If you need another part of your life to be worked on, for example, relationships, or what you help people with, Frank, with porn addiction, like that's how you do it. Don't run away from the things that you need to work on in your life. Then you'll get to a place where you feel like superhuman.
I love that, man. Absolutely love it. Guys, check out Ted, legendarylifepodcast.com/free for his masterclass. We'll link all down his other socials there as well. And as always, guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us here today. If you got value out of this conversation, continue to support us, get this message out there, rate, review, do all that amazing stuff. And if there's a guy in your life that needs this information, do us a favor and share this episode with him. But for Ted Ryce, your host, Coach Frank here, we love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.